This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so hi Sumit, I am Sachin Amray. So I'm a iOS developer, and today, we are going to cover a few topics from the iOS. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, the screen is visible to you? Yes. Okay. Okay, all right. So basically, in this particular session, so we are going to cover following three topics. One is the data storage, push notifications, and the camera and the gallery access. All right. So while working with the mobile application, so sometimes we used to store the data locally. All right. So if any of the application that you want to give the support for the offline storage, or you need to do some offline functionality in that particular application. So uh, in that particular case, the data storage comes in picture. So there are like different types of ways where you can store the data locally. So these are some of the these are some of the topics that we are going to cover in this today's session. And under the data storage, we are going to cover the user default, keychain, saving files to disk, core data, SQLite, and the property list. Okay. So first of all, we'll go with the user defaults. Okay. So basically before starting with the data storage, so what is data persistence and all these things. So basically it's a mechanism of storing any type of data to the disk, so that we can retrieve that data at the time of whenever we want to access that particular data. Okay. And these are following different ways we can store the data locally. So we will cover user default first. Okay, so user default comes in picture where you want to store simple key value pair, or it stores data basically in key value pair. So let's take an example of user default. Okay, so this is my playground. So this is user default. Okay, so many times if you created any application, okay, and in that particular application, so while creating any API request, or while sending the data to the server, sometimes you need your username, or your user ID, or some password. Okay, so at that time, what we'll do, once we get that particular username or password from the server, so we will store that in a user default. And whenever we want to send that particular data to the server back, okay, in that particular case, we will retrieve that particular key or particular data from the user default, and we will send. Okay, so here is the example. I have my username. Okay, I have my password. Okay. So this is basically a user default dot standard. So what exactly user default is? It's one of the what we can say shared class, iOS default shared class, which is used to store the data locally. Okay. So user default dot standard will give you a singleton instance. Okay. And we can set the any value by using the method set value for that particular key. Okay. So in this example, I am storing my username for the key username. Okay. So here the key should be unique for each value. Okay. So uh, you can store you can use different keys to store different values. So the condition is, or the what we can say, the key should be unique in that particular case. So I am setting these value for the different key, and to retrieve the value, so basically we'll use same singleton instance, and what we can say, we retrieve the value for that particular key. So in this example, so we are retrieving the value for username. Okay. So why I have done these as string. Okay. So if you okay. Now, if you check the signature of this particular set value at the bottom, this set value, okay, where my cursor is. Okay, so what we are setting the value, we are storing value as a any, okay, for that particular string key. Okay, so let's say I'm storing my username. Okay, right now it's a string, but while storing, we store that particular username as a string, oh sorry, as a any. Okay, and while retrieving that particular value from that particular key, so it will return me as a any. So if I'm trying to get a value for key, okay, so if you take the signature, what's the return type? Return type is any. Okay, so for that particular reason, we have to typecast this as a string, that I want that particular value as a string from the user default. That is why I am using this as a string. And now I am using iflet, because not necessary every time this typecasting will succeed. Sometimes if it gets fail, then we can have some nil value, and we can avoid like the runtime crashes to unwrapping those nil values and all those things. So in that particular case, we'll have this iflet and guarded statement. So instead of iflet, you can use guarded also here. Okay, so this is how user default work. So basically like the storing the small kind of stuffs like username, password, some tokens or something. So in that particular case, we can use user default. All right. Okay, so like these are the some advantages of user default, like easy to use with a simple API. Like you want to use like only that particular singleton class to store data or to retrieve the data. It is thread safe operation. Like every time you are not like worrying about the synchronization, or there is no need to synchronize every time after storing the data. It will get auto synchronized, so it's a thread safe. Okay, and it's a like it's shareable between app and app extension. So on that particular in that particular module or anything, you can easily access that user default. Now the limitations of that user default is like it is possible to easily override the value. So let's say I have stored my username by using that particular username key. Okay, and I use like I store any other value by using the same key, then that value may get override. Got it? So that's the advantage of like using disadvantage of using the user default. The second disadvantage is it's not encrypted. So like just what I have told, like the username is not encrypted, so anyone can easily retrieve the username from the user default. So for the security reason, user default is not so secure. So we cannot use this user default frequently. The unit testing is like for that particular user default can occur some false positive. These are some unit test case related drawbacks. And like the user default can be altered globally from anywhere in the app, so you can run in the inconsistent state easily. So these are some disadvantages. Okay, like did you get it? Yes. Okay, okay, if you have any doubt you can ask me. Okay, no. All right. Okay, now what is the keychain? So basically the keychain is like the keychain of that particular app where we can store the data locally. Okay, so like the Apple keychain is very popular and functional Swift tool for the iOS and Mac OS. Okay, and basically the most popular use of that keychain is like we are storing the passwords, some username or some secure data in a keychain, and it's encrypted so no one can easily retrieve that data. So that's the what we can say the advantages of keychain. Okay, so right now like for using the keychain, so there are many third party libraries or the wrappers available to store data in a keychain, and we can have like the custom classes for the keychain, and by using those classes we can easily store data in a keychain. So these are some advantages, like it's encrypted, and we are like There are a lot of open source libraries available to store data in a keychain. It's more secure and same again, it's a thread safe. So these are some advantages of keychain. And the limitation of like there is no handy old fashioned keychain API. So like every time we have to use like some wrapper or something. So that's like the one of the limitation of the uh, keychain. The another one is like hard to write the unit test cases. Then sometimes if we store a lot of data in a keychain, okay, so sometimes it creates some like the optimization related things or the speed related things may cause the slowness in the app. And like it's not recommended to store the large objects. Okay, just one. समजत नाही मला काय वाटतंय रे. रेकॉर्डिंग पॉज झाली ना. Resume. की ना रेकॉर्डिंग मुळे मला तुला प्रॉपरली समजवता येत नाही असं मला वाटतंय.
नाही आता एन्क्रिप्टेड डिक्रिप्टेड होईल.
कसं आहे नाही रे. हो असं वाटतं म्हणजे मोर कॉन्सन्ट्रेशन जास्त तिकडे रेकॉर्डिंगलाच होत आहे. ठीक आहे मी पॉज केली. काय असतं बेसिकली हे बघ युजर डिफॉल्ट असतं. तर आता युजर डिफॉल्ट मध्ये काय असतं रे की जनरल ज्या छोट्या काही आपल्याला असं आहे की याचे काही तुला ग्लोबल लेवलला काही फ्लॅग सेट करायचे. ओके आता कसं असतं की काही आपण क्लास लेवलचे घेतो पण त्याचा स्कोप काय राहतो की विदिन दॅट पर्टिक्युलर क्लास राहतो. ओके
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so let's move to next topic. The next topic is core data. Okay, so basically where the core data comes in picture, like suppose you want to store some uh, big data locally, like there are some certain users, okay, which are using the app and you need to store that all particular user data locally. So like keychain or the user default is not like useful in this case because these are the user default or keychain are used to store some key value pairs or some what we can say the small data or the restricted data. Okay, but while we can use the core data to store the big amount of data. Okay, so let me show you exactly how to like how we can use the store data. Okay, core data. So basically here we are creating the one class like core data manager, and in that particular core data manager we have one shared instance. Okay, so by using that shared instance we will like access its properties and methods by using that shared instance. Here we are creating the persistent container. So basically container is what we are performing certain operations on that particular container. So the container is nothing but the ns persistent container. Okay, and we will perform all of our read write operations on that particular container. Okay, after that I have written main context. So what is the main context is nothing but the ns manage object context. So basically this context is help us to like to perform certain operations on that particular container. Okay, so in that particular case we will use this nh manage object context to perform operation. We have written another like background context to store the data or to save data in a background manner. So in that particular case we will use this background context. Okay, so let's take an example. Okay, so I have created one. Okay, so I have created one dummy application. Okay, in that application I have like dummy app exit data model, and in that exit data model I have created one entity for the user. Okay, and the user has like email and name. Okay, and which has type string. So like what here I'm going to do, I'm storing the all user information in the core data. So like we have load details. So basically load details will fetch all the users which are stored in that particular store data. So for that particular to get that user data from the core data, so we have to Like first of all, we have to get that main context, and we have to create one fetch request for that particular user, and we will apply that particular fetch request on that container by using the main context, and main context will return the result, which is nothing but the array of that particular user stored in that core data. So this is the function to like retrieve the data from core data. So here we are using the load data function to get all the user data from the core data. And same as like to save the particular data, so like we have the user entity as I mentioned already. So we have to get that user entity programmatically, and like we are setting some values for that particular user entity. Like we are setting the name of that particular user, we are setting the email of that particular user, and now we are like saving that particular user in core data by using that particular context in a background manner. So here we are saving the user's data in a core data. So these are some basic operations that we can perform in the core data. So like what are the advantages of using core data? So core data is simple to set up and use. There are some additional tools provided by Apple for fetching data. Like you can refer the Apple's official documentation to we have created the fetch request to fetch the user data. So there are some other operations as well. So you can refer the Apple's documentation. Oh, and as far as speed and performance is concerned, like the possibility to be a cache when set in a memory. So like performance wise, core data is quite faster, we can consider. And the another advantage is like it's a simple one, like out of the box database migration. So you can consider it's a simple one. The limitation of core data is like uses quite advanced threading policies. Suppose you want to perform some asynchronous operations on the core data. So in that particular way, the threading comes in picture, and the threading is quite complex. So this is one of the disadvantage of using core data. The second is like being forced to use NS manage object subclass for every new object in a database. So yeah, this is one disadvantage. Like every time we need to use that NS manage object while performing any operation over the core data. And the sometimes NS manage object have problems with synchronizing database changes. So sometimes data cannot be synchronized. So that's one of the disadvantages of using core data. So did you get core data?
Yes.
Okay. So let's move to next topic, saving file to disk. So unlike the core data, so like suppose there are application like we have to download particular image and store that particular image in a file manager or in a documents directory. So these are the like use case, or these are the steps how you can do that. Okay. So like we have mentioned, like every application has a sandbox directory. Okay, those sandbox is like the app's default storage we can consider as a sandbox. And let me show you the example of like how we are going to store data. Okay, so this is example how we are going to store the data locally. Oh, okay. So like that core data manager, so we have like file manager. Okay, so it's a custom class that we have created. Also, we have written some error cases while storing that particular data. So the file may be already exist, the invalid directory, the file writing operation may fail, file not exist, reading fail. So these are some cases I have considered while performing the operation on the file manager. Okay. So like to save any particular file in a file manager, so we have to like give the name of that particular file and the data which we want to store the locally, and know exactly what file manager does. So it will create one local URL for us. So local URL, like it's a local sandbox URL for the particular device. And first of all, it will check whether the same the data for that particular file has been available on the same path or not. If it's available, then it will return that particular error, like the file already exists. If it's not, then it will perform the write operation on that particular data, and the data will get written on that particular storage or that particular path. So yeah, this make URL function we are using here to get the URL, local URL of that particular file. And for reading that particular operation, so like we are just fetching the particular data from that file path using that local URL. So it will return core data, it will return the data to us. So next is,
This meeting is being recorded.
okay, so like we went through the code base of how to save the data using the file manager in documents directory. So there are like few advantages and limitations of storing the data in a file manager or document directory. So advantage of like the file manager can be used with iCloud storage. So our app data is synchronized between all iOS and macOS devices. So now this the local storage data can be in sync with iCloud, so that you can easily access that data from your another device or between the devices. So that's the advantage. The second one is like it's a thread safe. Third, like the file manager can be used in many other ways, like listing directory content, creating directories, moving, copying or removing the files. Also, you can store the large object like photo to disk as long as there is enough local storage on the device. So like you can store the photos, videos, any documents file, any text file. So you can easily store that in file manager. The limitations of the file manager is like creating the URL path can be error prone. So like for any particular read write operation, so every time we have to create that local URL. So sometimes it may create some issues. So that's the limitation of using the file manager. Second, like you cannot store the absolute URL of given file, as the sandbox of application can be moved. So yeah, this is the disadvantage. Like it's a local URL, so it cannot constant every time. So that's one of the disadvantage of that file manager. And the speed penalty, like the reading saving file from disk can be very slow. So if you store like large file like video files or something, so it may take some time. So it can be slow. Okay, now like we are going to cover the plist. So basically, like we have the info.plist file in our application. So which is like the main file in the application, which used to store, or which has build related settings or all configuration related settings in that particular plist file. But we can store the data in a plist file as well. So the data in the plist file can be stored in a key value manner. Okay, and the plist file can be used to store the data, like the bundle identifier or some configuration related changes, some configuration URL changes, some like bucket or AWS bucket related things. So we can store all that data in a plist file. Okay, so let me show you the example of that particular. So okay, so here I have created one configuration plist file. Okay, so like in that particular plist file, I have like two key value pairs. One is dev and another is prod. Okay, and under that particular dev, so I have like debugging enable the base URL of that dev environment, the AWS bucket name of that dev environment. And similarly, I have done changes for the prod environment. So I can have the base URL for the prod environment and bucket name for the prod environment. So basically, like if you have a number like 2 3 flavors in your application, okay, So by using this plist file, you can easily retrieve this base URL and make API call for the dev environment, and make the API call the base environment at the runtime. There is like no manual intervention like in this particular scenario. So you can configure the number of changes you want to be done on the runtime. So these are the like advantages of using the configuration plist. So like how to read the data from the configurations file. So I have created one class, the configuration class. Okay, so it's basically a singleton class, created one singleton instance, shared instance for that configuration file. And I have initialize like I have initialize method to initialize the uh, key value pair or to create the dictionary from that particular plist file. So over here I am like getting the configuration related dictionary. So I'm mentioning like from which path I have to read that plist file. So I have mentioned like configuration of type plist, and as this file is in a bundle, so I'm giving the bundle path to read that particular file, and converting that particular file into the dictionary format so that I can access the values from that particular key. And I can have like that API base URL, that debugging enable or S3 bucket name. Okay. Also, I can have like the methods to get the API base URL, the bucket name. So in this way, we can like have different configuration related changes in the configuration file, and we can do whatever the changes we want at the runtime. So these are like advantages of using a plist file.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so like we went through the code base of how to like read the data from the plist. So now let's take a look at advantages and disadvantage, like the limitation of the plist file. The advantage is like it's very easy to read the data from the plist file. It's an advantage of that plist file. And also the plist file can be used to specify some environmental values like the base backend URL. Like we have created some sample code. So in that particular manner, plist is very useful. The limitation is like working with strings keys can be error prone. So same like it's a key value pair, so that can create some issues. It's easy to break plist file with some unclosed key or value input. So like if you open the plist file in a source code, okay, so like let's okay, so let's you open that particular plist file in a source code manner, and if you miss any like these of the braces, so it may create some issues. So that's one disadvantage of that plist file. So you have to be very particular about the closing and opening braces. So that's disadvantage. And also like the limitation is like you can store small amount of data or the small object of the primitive types only. So there are no custom types allowed, like primitive types only, the string, integer or some other value. So only primitive types can be allowed to be stored in that particular plist file. So this is how like the local data storage works. So like we went through the user default, keychain, core data, file manager, and the plist file. Okay, now let's move to the another topic, the Apple push notification. So the push notification is like we have seen that notifications everywhere in every application. So like the main agenda of that particular Apple push notification is how we are going to configure this push notification in the our app. So let's go. So like what is the use of APNs to display the messages? So let's take an example of WhatsApp. If someone sent you a message, so you got that particular notification like the message. So you can easily read message from the notification itself. So it can display a message, it can play a sound, it can set a badge icon. So badge, like suppose there are 10 notifications pending. So you will get the 10 count on that particular app. So it's a batch count. So you can set the badge on your app icon. Also, you can perform particular action while clicking on that particular notification. So if you get the notification from the WhatsApp and you click on that particular chat, so you will redirect to the particular user chat of that. Okay, so you can perform certain action on that. Also, you can show images and any other media type on that notification banner. And the silent notification can perform certain background task. Okay, so let's say we need to perform some background task, but we do not want to notify the user. In that particular case, we can have the silent notification. Okay, so basically how notification works. So for this step one, so if you register, we first of all you have to register your app for the notification. Okay, so once you did the registration, you will get the device token from the APNS. Okay, now you have to send that the APNS will send device token to our app. Okay, now we need to send that particular device token to our local server. And if anything any event happen, like any data came from the notification, then our server send that particular data to the APNS server, and APNS push that particular data to our device. So this is how like the whole cycle works. Okay, so what first of all we have to register application for the notification. After registering application, we will get one device token from the APNS. Then we have to send that device token to our local server. Then if any particular event happen or data comes, then that particular data can send to the APNS server, and then APNS server push that data via notification to our app. So this is how APNS works. So to configure the APNS, so we need to make some changes. Okay, so first of all, like we have to enable the capability for the push notification. So this is where, so let's say this is my application. So target. Okay, so right now there are no capabilities. So let's say I can enable the capabilities over here. So there are different types. So push notification must be there. I think this particular ID bundle ID is not configured for the APNS, so that is why it's not showing. But you will get that particular capability over here. Okay, you need to enable that particular capability for the push notification. Then you need to like create the certificate for the push notification, the APNS certificate for the push notification. So for that particular, you need to log into your Apple developer console, and in that particular developer console, so you will redirect it to the certificate part, and under the certificate and provisioning profile, so you need to create the certificate. Okay. Oh, okay. So I will like I will log into my account. Okay, so to create the APNS certificate, so we need to go under like the certificates and other. Account is not valid. Okay, so let's go into the slides that the currently account is not working, so I cannot create any other certificate. So first of all, like to create any new certificate, so we have to create one CSR file by using the Keychain, and we need to provide that CSR file while creating the new certificate. Okay, so like once you click on generate new certificate, it will ask you to upload the CSR file. Okay, and once you upload the CSR file, it will create the APNS certificate for you, and you can download that certificate, and you have to like place that certificate in your kitchen. So like, so these are some methods to enable the push notification in your code. So like first of all, you have to register your application for the push notification. So in that particular app delegate method, that app delegates did finish launching with options method, you have to register your application for the remote notification, and you can provide the like the authorization request like the badge, alert, or sound. Okay, so if you provide these all three options, so you will get badge, alert, and sound. Also, this is the method which returns you the device token which you get from the did register for remote notification with device token method. You will get the device token from the APNS, and from here you can send this particular device token to your local server. And if any error occurs, then this did fail registration method calls. And once any notification received from the APNS, so this did receive remote notification method get called, and from that particular user info, you can pass that data, and you can display a message, or you can perform any action by tapping on that particular notification. So this method gets called once when user taps on the remote notification. Also, it's not necessary that every time user enables the notification. So if you want to check the status of the notification, so you can write this function, and you will get like if user has allowed the push notification, so it will like gives the proper error whether user denied the push notification or any permission related things. So you can check over here. So this is basically a small checklist while setting up the APNS. The checklist is like first of all, we have to create the app ID that allows the push notification. Okay. The second step is like we have to create the SSL certificate with a valid certificate and app ID. Third is like we need the provisioning profile with that same certificate, like whether it's for the sandbox or the production. So we need provisioning profile. And from the code side, so first of all, we need to register our app for the push notification. Then we need to add the push notification handling method. Also, we need to enable the capability for the remote notification, and we need to like handle that particular notification tab scenario. So these are some checklist before you enable the push notifications.
This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so any doubt in push notifications? So like after registering for the notification, and if user opens the app, then this kind of message user will get. And once user will allow this notification, then he will like start getting the notifications from the application. Okay, Now, like in many of the applications, like there were some scenarios you have to use the camera in gallery or the photos from the gallery. So, like how to access the camera and the gallery from the application. So, these are few steps. Like first of all, as we discussed already, that in info.plist file, so we have some permission related things of the application. So we need to add one permission for to access the camera and the gallery. So in this particular way, we can add the row, or we can like directly have the plus button on that particular info.plist file, and we can add the permission related to the camera and gallery access. So once you add the permission and like, so you will get this kind of message. So every time you have to give the proper message, so that usually a user can easily understand, or like why we are accessing the camera, or taking the photo of the particular user. So we need to add other meaningful message over here in that particular plist file. And like this is the code snippet. Like, so let me show you the code snippet. So like I have created one view controller, and like I have implemented image picker controller delegate and navigation controller delegate methods. So in this particular did appear file. So first of all, I am checking that particular image picker, each camera source available. If the camera source is available, then we are setting that particular delegate, and we are setting the source type of like as a camera. We can set here as a gallery or as a source type, and we are presenting that controller so that it will open that particular gallery or camera controller. There are like two three options. If you cancel that particular gallery, then that particular image picker controller will get dismissed. And if you choose any particular photo from that gallery, so this is the callback method where we are getting the photo once user choose that particular photo from the that particular gallery or from the camera. So here we can access that image, and we can perform any operation whatever we want on that particular image. So this is how the camera access and all these things work. Okay, so this is in the delegate method. Yeah. Okay, so do you have any questions so far?
No, everything is clear.
Okay. Or if you have any question, okay, so you can like ask me offline or anytime. Okay. Okay, then thank you. Thank you so much for joining the session.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.